I figured I'd do a quick shop update. So I've moved some stuff around. I made a few things. I'd built this frame for something a while back. I can't remember what it was now. And I've kind of had it sitting there doing nothing. So I just sort of put a quick cart together for all of my sheet metal. All the scraps that I use for cutting different things. I've got, different pieces of plate, 1/4 inch, 1/8 inch, and all that sort of leaned up in here. And I've got to finish this side, and I'm actually going to put some more wheels under it. I've got 4, but I'm probably going to put 2 there and 2 there. So I did that, and I've kind of rearranged a lot of stuff, actually. So I've got my 2 extra cylinders over here, engine stand. And I also made this. So I got these bins in a trade with somebody. And right now, this is where all of my little pieces of scrap are. And, you always need this stuff. A little chunk that big or whatever to just do something with. So I wanted a way to organize it. So I had these bins that have been trashing up my yard. And so I just welded them together. Cut the feet off the corners and put these wheels in here so I can move this thing around with all of my scrap in it, hopefully. So I'm going to set it up to where I've got steel, stainless, aluminum, and that kind of thing. And this is going to be my press brake eventually, just a little miniature press brake that I'm going to make at some point. And again, I'm starting to put wheels on everything in my shop so I can just move it out of the way if I need to. So I'm doing that. I'm actually about to build another one of these, but for air tools. So I'm going to do that. I made these brackets for these bigger ones. So I wanted to be able to organize those a little bit better. Those have just kind of been sitting there. So I did that. And we got a friend of mine that works for a recycling place, and he gets a lot of stuff. Like, see this light here? I made the bracket for it, but he gave me the light. And this thing, so if you see out here, when I plug this thing in, the amount of light that this thing puts off is just insane. So I put it here, pointing this way, where when I'm working in an engine or something, I can just easily plug that in and see. I'm going to put a switch on it at some point. And I've actually got a few more of them. A couple of them don't work, so I've got to mess with them a little bit. But he got all this stuff for free. It's just junk that people threw away. And actually, this is something that someone threw away. So it came off of some kind of a delivery truck, I believe. But it's kind of an ingenious way to do stuff. You've got a piece of unistrut here and here with a little, there's 2 bearings on each one of these things. It just rides up and down in the unistrut. So it had the little winch on it. And what I did is I didn't want to buy a battery for this thing. So I've got a little Harbor Freight jump box that I use for a bunch of stuff, and I just welded one of these little brackets on here just to hang it, and I can just clamp onto this solenoid, and I put this solenoid on it, so I can use it. There we go. And I just zip tied this on there, but basically this gives me the ability to lift stuff easily, and it will actually pick up all 200 pounds of me. So I can do that, and I just put a winch remote on it, and I've actually got the buttons wrong, but I'll fix that later. But what I got it for, I had to put little wheels on the back, so I just put some brackets and braces on the back, and what I've been doing is buying these little things here, which they're fantastic for rolling stuff heavy around the shop, but a lot of times I'll rob the casters off of it. These solid plastic casters seem to work better than some of the other ones they have up there. So like I would buy some of them, and I bought some and put on one of these just like this. And what happened was it got a flat spot in the wheel. So it would sit there for so long that the wheel would deform and you'd have a flat spot. So when you tried to move it around, it was painful, aggravating. Where these don't get that flat spot. And those little furniture remover things are supposed to pick up like 1,000 pounds, supposedly. So I've got them on both of my presses, and it works pretty well. So everything works really well. So anyway, but yeah, I thought this was kind of cool. The whole reason I was doing this, and I'm probably going to take these two arms and possibly chop them off, put a little plate, right in this general area here, and put a little arm with something that I can maybe, lift up and down here, to where some of the stuff that I've got in the shop, like this is the 4th axis for my CNC mill, and that thing is like 200 and something pounds. So I could take that, and if it'll pick up 230 pounds me, it should pick that up. And you have to put it in through this window, and you've got to move the table all the way over. So I could actually use that in here. I could roll it over here and pick that up and kind of go in this way and drop it down. And I could do the same thing for like these chucks or a tailstock, or like that center or steady rest. That thing is heavy. It is really hard to pick up. So, and that's one of those things that I was, talking about. I can just take this and roll it around the shop. So just makes life a lot easier. Or like this 4-jaw chuck that is just massive. I don't know what that thing weighs, but it is stupid heavy. So anyway, but I got this rolling finally, and it works pretty well. So it took a while to get all of this done, but once I figured out what was going on, so the last time I think I had gotten everything working, I thought, and then this turret had quit working. So what had happened was I had a piece of stock in just like this, and in my program, my part was this long, and this was the back of the part, and I was using this drill to drill in, and the program kept showing an error. It kept showing, hey, you're going to run into something in this operation. But when I did the simulation, it looked like it drilled. Everything was great. But what happened was this drill was, instead of rapiding to this position and then starting its pecking cycle and drilling in, it literally rapided to the back. So it rapided to the back instead of rapiding to the front of the stock. And so what happened is this thing rapided in, and what it did is it pushed this shaft through the back of this. And then when it tried to rotate around to change tools, it wedged itself into that. And of course, I ended up taking this apart, trying to take this off, but it was wedged in place, and I couldn't understand what in the heck was going on. But I finally figured out, called a friend of mine who is actually really good at working on this stuff, and he comes over and I'm explaining what all's going on and why I can't figure out why this thing does it, or what it was doing. And I look down and I see this shaft wedged up against there, and it was like, you idiot. So took a pry bar, shoved that out, it unlocked, put all this stuff back together, and everything has worked fantastic ever since. So I bought these. These are Schar's tool holders, and for this thing, so far I've been very impressed. These are still inserts, but I need to get some aluminum ones, but they seem to work pretty decent on this thing. And this little cutoff tool, man, I love that thing. I'm going to buy me a couple more of these for my other lathes. So either way, everything works as it's supposed to now. So what I did do is the rapids on this thing So it was doing a really good job, and what I would end up having to do is run this override down about 50%, because what would happen is anytime it would do like a pecking operation with this, when I wanted to put a groove in something, it would come in and peck and then peck and then peck and peck, and it would make whatever groove that I wanted in whatever, you know, width. The problem was it was violent. So when it would rapid and peck, it was like and very aggressively move, and the entire lathe would just shake. Of course, then I had I still had it on wooden blocks because I was still working on it, and I just never got around to putting those under it. Those did help when I did that, but it was still just violent, and it just seems like it would put more wear and tear on the machine than is necessary. I'm not doing production. This is just a hobby for me in all reality. So instead of doing that, I got on the Centroid forum, and I will have to correct myself from past videos, but man, their support is fantastic. You can get on the user support forum, and there's a guy on there that is just awesome. And as soon as I asked the question, the next morning I had that answered, and he said, go into the setup, do this, and you can change your rapids. So I did that, and it seems to have helped. It's still a little jerky, and I want to figure that out. I don't know if it's the rapids or if maybe something with the encoder, the way it's moving stuff around is not right. I don't know, but it does good work. One of the issues that I'm having is when I touch off in X, I figured that out. So I'll touch off and you know, cut a diameter, measure it, and then I'll put it in the computer. And what I figured out I have to do after that is I'll have to run a couple of parts, and I have to dial that in. So I'll use the wear, and I'll go in a thou or a thousandths this way until I get it right where I want it. And I make sure when I tell it, hey, I want this to be 1 inch, it'll cut, you know, 1 inch, 100 thou. And I'll just go in here and change the, so if you go to setup, tool, if you notice I've got some of the corrections in for some of these other tools. So that gets it where I need it, and it stays there. It's accurate once you get it to that place. The problem that I'm having is the Z offsets. So when I'm telling it to go, apparently what you're supposed to do is use tool 1 and touch off on this surface, or do a facing cut, and you tell it, hey, this is my tool 1, this is my Z. But for whatever reason, for each other tool, when I try to touch off, and then you're supposed to do the offset for that tool, it'll be over here, or way past there. So what I end up having to do is I'll do the facing cut with tool 1, and then I'll go through and do the offsets, and then I'll go into MDI and I'll say, hey, go Z3. And it'll, you know, sometimes it'll come here, and then I'll take a 1, 2, 3 block and kind of put between here, and eventually dial it in and figure out what Z3 really should be, and then I'll put that difference in the library here until I get everything in place. I think I'm doing that wrong. That's just the way I figured out how to do it in my weird brain, but I think there's a better